Hello and welcome to The Stack. It's a packed show full of celebrations. A decade of Jeremy Leslie's MagCulture, the mecca for independent magazines. The world of interiors? Go Mini. The Japanese bookstore that you must visit while in Tokyo. And Field Mag ventures into print. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show with a big celebration. 10 years of MagCulture, the wonderful London magazine shop under the helm of Jeremy Leslie, a magazine expert and one of our most cherished guests here on The Stack. It's not only a magazine shop, it's a must-visit for whoever comes to London, a place for events, workshops, and for those who all adore print as much as we do. At the moment, beside all the celebrations, Jeremy is getting ready for MagCulture Live, happening this Thursday, the 13th of November, in London. He tells me more about the lineup and the changes in independent publishing in the last decade. Jeremy Leslie, welcome to The Stack. And today is a very special date, right? 10 years of MagCulture.
It is a special day, and thank you for having me on to talk about it. Yes, I can't quite believe it is 10 years, but it's 10 years of the MagCulture shop, yeah.
I mean, this is my impression, but of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that world that we work on, independent publishing in 2015 and 2025, it feels quite different to me, but I think we're in a better phase perhaps than in 2015. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's been an extraordinary decade. I think when I opened the shop, it was very much a sort of jump into the dark. I had no retail experience and I was just sort of had a sense that it was worth a punt. And at the time it felt right, and it's grown slowly over those years. But then since the pandemic, it's just blossomed into something new. There are so many people wanting to make magazines, so many people wanting to buy magazines. So it's a completely different environment now. I always felt positive about it from the beginning, but now it's a complete kind of ecosystem that exists. There's a network of like-minded people, and there's lots of people looking and paying attention.
You literally kind of created a community. I mean, and it's funny, it's not just in London. I mean, you talk to people in New York or Manila. You know, when they come to London, they have to go to MagCulture in a way, right? So it became kind of a destination, a little bit of a landmark, right?
I hope so, yes. I mean, certainly that's the impression I have. I mean, the situation of the shop down at quite a large but quiet road in Clerkenwell is not the most obvious place to find a shop like ours, but I had in mind that it would become a destination, and I think it has. We get a lot of visitors from across the world as well as local. You know, we are in the middle of a whole bunch of, there's a lot of universities near us. CSM is near us for the design side. City University has a huge journalism course. There's a lot of students and local people, a lot of design studios around us, but we do have a lot of visitors from abroad, yes, and there is a sort of informal global network of people interested in independent magazines, and we're a part of that for sure.
And these days is more than just a shop, like if you look, I receive all your emails. There's an event almost every week. I mean, of course, we're going to talk about the big one that is happening next week. But tell us how important it is, that part, not just being a shop, but being a place where you can launch magazines, where you can have other things besides just...
Well, we always intended to have events there, and, just from a simple marketing perspective, the idea was to get some of the people that make the magazines to come in and talk about their new issues, and for them to bring their crowd of readers and interested folk in. But I think one of the biggest surprises I had in taking on the shop was that it became this kind of public space, which I think happens to a lot of shops. It's common with independent shopkeeping. I think if you set up your flag and say, right, we're going to, as we do, we love magazines, people come and they want something from that. They want the magazines, but they expect to talk to the staff about what's interesting, find out about new magazines. And publishers come in with their new copies to try and ask us to sell their magazines. And so it is a community in its own right, but it's part of a bigger community, as I say. There's a network of kind of linked communities. But, I like to think we're kind of very much at the heart of that and trying to drum that up. So we have regular events at the shop of various types, launches, talks, panel discussions. And that's a really key part of what we do. But even on a day-to-day basis, we just get interesting people are in, and they're invariably got an interesting story themselves. They want to hear our story. And so it's just an exchange.
One thing about MagCulture that I like, how much you react very fast to trends. You're always the first one to sell Popeye. That's very important, and it must be quite a lot of hard work as well.
It is, but that's always... I mean, I've been working in magazines aside from retail for all my career, and when I want a magazine, I want a magazine.
Yeah.
I don't want to be told, oh, it'll be here in a month or so. So it's part of our kind of ethos, or part of the idea behind what we do is that we have a really broad selection of magazines. We have about 700 at any one time, and in fact, actually, for the 10th anniversary, I've gone back into all the records and established that we've sold 1,600 different titles over those years.
Wow.
In fact, we've just done a T-shirt that lists them all, so that'll be coming out soon to celebrate the anniversary. But
people love merchandising.
Absolutely, merch.
Merch is important.
But we have a lot of magazines, and we carefully sort of select them and choose them. But we like to get them as soon as and get them on sale. And things like when New York Magazine launched the print edition of The Cut, we were very keen to get that in because we knew there'd be an interest, and we knew we'd get calls and emails from people saying, oh, do you think you can get this? So we like to get it before we get those calls. So yeah, we're very on the front foot in that respect. We want to have the latest stuff now.
We must talk about MagCulture Live, which also has been going on for years. And I think this year is a very special celebration, not only because of 10 years of MagCulture, but it's really like, the independent publishing is here, and they are the ones dictating what the industry is doing, right?
Absolutely.
That's the whole idea of this year's event.
Yeah, I think both from the shop perspective and MagCulture Live perspective, we've always tried to mix. We've majored on the indies always. I mean, but the thinking behind that was always that we were interested in the magazines that were interesting, that were doing something innovative or challenging the norm, and that inevitably came more from the indies. But they also some of the newspaper magazines. I mean, the New York Times magazine, of course, remains an absolute benchmark, but unfortunately we can't sell that, so we don't. But we have the New Yorker and one or two mainstream titles, or sort of more established long-term titles. But over those 10 years, we've seen interest in things like Vanity Fair and the Vogues drop off as they become less interesting, frankly. We've always had a lot of indies, but now we really are full-on indies. And for this year's MagCulture Live, we're celebrating that with an indie-only lineup and featuring three of the big indies from, I think people think of indies as being launched 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but we've got three magazines represented that launched in the early 2000s. So they've been around for 20 years. So that's 032C, Fantastic Man, and Apartamento, all of which are huge sellers. They're absolute indie-minded in their approach. And this is where the future of publishing lies. These are the people that are leading us forward.
And the beautiful thing about that also, sometimes you have this idea, you're going to launch a beautiful magazine, and then where is issue 2? Perhaps there will be no issue 2. But with those titles that you've mentioned, it's incredible, the consistency. I think they remain as relevant as 5 years ago or when they launched in a way as well. So I think this resilience is so important.
But I think that's the key thing, is I think there is a perception that indies come and go, and they do. That's the nature of the beast, is that people put a lot of energy into it and then can't see it through. Maybe somebody produces 2 or 3 issues of a fabulous magazine and it has its time and it's gone. But there are plenty of examples of magazines that have lasted for 15, 20 years, and these are they. And they still are full of energy, full of life, and taking the culture forward.
And so tell us more about the event. So it's happening next week indeed here in London. If people are interested, where can they buy tickets, or will there be something online as well?
Well, both. I mean, tickets are available online for the live event. There's a few left now. But we'll also be live streaming it because we know that we get a lot of interest from abroad. So it takes place on Thursday, the 13th of November, here in London at the Vitsu shop up in Marylebone. We've been there for the last 2 years. Tickets are available at magculture.com online. There are student rates. I hope you'll come and join us in real life, but if not, join us online.
Students must love going to MagCulture as well. I think it became a little bit of a student hub as well, right?
Yeah.
Every time I go there's like a student kind of doing research.
We do a lot of work with students. I mean, both informally in terms of welcoming them. I think there's a big difference between the old world of magazine retail, where there'd be a sign alongside the magazine saying no browsing and,
no pictures,
only
nothing.
pick it up if you want to buy it and all that kind of nonsense. We encourage people. We have comfortable seats and sofas and stuff, and we encourage people to come in and look. So we get a lot of students researching and looking at stuff, and we're conscious that sometimes they come in and just use it as a library. But the point is to get them interested in print and get them hungry for print, and plenty of them do buy lots of stuff. But we do a more formal thing as well. This first term of the academic year, this term we're in at the moment, every week I do a 1 hour session with a different student group from a different university, spanning, design, art direction, photography, journalism, fashion promotion, etc., talking to them about MagCulture and the magazines that we celebrate. Because part of what we want to do is make sure there's a new generation of people that are interested in print coming through, and believe me, there are.
Amazing. Well, you gave already some spoilers that there will be a special T-shirt.
Right.
We all love to hear it. But, I mean, the celebrations don't end there. I mean, will there be more parties, more events? What's coming up on the pipeline?
We already had a big kind of industry party. We had all our friends and associates and people who we work with. That was earlier in the year when we could enjoy the outdoors and it was a bit warmer. So that was in September. We're building up now to the actual date of the anniversary, which is December the 11th. When we've still got to make the final plans. But on December the 11th in the shop, which I think is a Thursday, there'll be something going on, don't know what yet, and that'll be the customer-facing celebration. During the day, we'll be, at the very least, offering people a glass of bubbly. And we've got more events in the pipeline before then. There's a lot happening. But, right now we're focusing on MagCulture Live. It's a one thing at a time business. It's a small team. So we're doing that. Once we've got MagCulture Live out of the way, full attention goes to the anniversary, and we will be celebrating.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. And you can get tickets and more information about MagCulture Live on magculture.com. And now to the revered design title, The World of Interiors. A pleasure to welcome back editor Emily Tobin on The Stack to talk about their brand new December 2025 issue. It's the mini issue, a celebration of all things tiny but perfectly formed. And besides the normal size issue, they're also launching a limited edition pocket size version with exclusive content. Emily tells me all about it. Emily Tobin, welcome back to The Stack. A pleasure to have you here to talk about The World of Interiors, one of our favorite magazines.
Thank you. It's very nice to be back again.
Well, I have the new issue in front of me. It's a very exciting one. But I thought I would start, asking, how are you? Because I remember when you came on the show last year, I think it was your first kind of months perhaps as editor-in-chief, right? So how has it been for you? I know you've been in the title before as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think last time you and I met, it was my first issue. And it was also the 500th issue.
Yes.
So in that mad racing of time way, I think we're now about 18 months on from there. So several more issues under our belt. But yeah, things are good. It's been, as it has been for everyone, it's been a busy couple of years. And we're just seeing the title go from strength to strength, which feels very, very exciting. We're having amazing growth on the digital side of things at worldofinteriors.com. And we hit 1 million followers on Instagram, which feels like a big moment for a title which has a niche audience and often a niche subject matter. It's kind of great to see us reaching that scale of audience as well. So that felt like a real moment for us. So no, things are good.
You mentioned the digital side, and I've been noticing, when I go to your website, and there's a lot of interesting new kind of sections as well. Like, for example, the room for debate, I think is quite an exciting one as well. Among them, should we use books as decor or something like that? So the hot topics, right?
Right, exactly. So this summer, this was a new section that we introduced. And it sort of exists in many different iterations. So it starts off as a column in print called Room for Debate. And as the title suggests, it's about starting conversations about the interiors world, about design, art, architecture, literature, film, fashion, all the subjects that we cover at the World of Interiors. But particularly within the interiors and design space, my feeling was that for quite a long time, we haven't really been getting into the weeds of it. It's all felt quite polite. And this isn't, I don't mean the World of Interiors specifically, I mean the industry as a whole. It's primarily been about what do things look like. It's been about aesthetics. And certainly within the World of Interiors office, we are always having these really exciting, meaty conversations. And so we wanted to bring those conversations to our audience. So the first one we published back in our June issue, I believe, the subject was, is there room for criticism within the interiors world? We have fashion critics, we have film critics, we have art critics, but we don't really see that level of criticism within the interiors space. And of course, there are lots of really obvious reasons for that. You're talking about someone's home, you're talking about someone's personal space. But it was a really good conversation starter. And then we've covered topics like nostalgia. We've spoken about whether or not our industry, and particularly what we do, is innately voyeuristic.
Yes, it is, right?
It is. It absolutely is. We're in a world that is built on nosiness. We love peering behind closed doors. And another fun one that we did recently was with Tony Liu, who's the founder of Diet Prada. And he wrote this brilliant essay on the key wordification of interiors. And actually, as interiors have become more and more popular on social media, have we lost track of the meaning behind them, the history, the bricks that build these spaces? And, once again, have they just become about what they look like rather than what they feel like and where they've come from? So that's a really fun one that we've been working on. And not only does it exist as a column in print, we obviously publish it online, we put it on social media, but we also invite our audience to get involved. So a little bit like an old-fashioned letters to the editor page, people can write in essays. And actually the collaboration we did with Tony from Diet Prada, within less than an hour of publishing it, 10 people had submitted essays on the subject. Wow. So it's kind of great. It feels like there's a real appetite for that conversation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fan or the reader of the world of interiors is very, I wouldn't say obsessed, but I think it feels very close to the brand in a way, more than just any other title out there.
I think so. I really do. And honestly, lucky us that we have that audience. And many of those readers have been with us right from the beginning. They've been there since 1981 and have shown this extraordinary loyalty. And then simultaneously, we're seeing this whole other generation come through. Something like a third of our digital audience is now made up of 25 to 34-year-olds. So that feels so galvanizing to see that those topics are really intergenerational. I think as long as something is done to the best possible standard with the best possible writing and the best possible photography, then it shouldn't be a surprise, actually, that we have that level of loyalty that comes from our subscribers and our readers.
I agree. Well, let's talk about the December issue, which is so interesting. When I first found out about it, it's the mini issue. I think this is such an interesting topic because I think we are super interested in the mini collectors. There's so many different examples. And that's the first one you had for the World of Interiors, right? The first mini issue.
This is the very first mini issue we have done. Yeah, so
it's mini in many ways. I mean, we have to explain as well to our readers because there'll be two versions of the magazine, the usual one and a real mini one as well.
That's right. So you can go to the newsstand and you can buy your normal size copy of The World of Interiors. And initially it started out as an issue that was going to be themed on small spaces, tiny little flats and cottages and whatever else it might be. It's no secret that most of us, certainly if you live in a city, aren't living with that much square footage to shout about. So that's how the idea started. And then, as is typical within the World of Interiors team, we like to push things to their absolute limit. So we were talking about small spaces. And then we were thinking about what is it about small spaces and what is it about the miniature that people are so fascinated with? Because, as you say, they really are. And I think, without sort of whipping out my cod psychology, but there is something in the fact that even as a child, you're given your toy car or your doll or whatever it is, and it gives you this sort of fast track to adulthood or even gianthood. And when we got to this point in the conversation, we thought, well, hang on a minute, what if we actually shrink the issue down itself? So we're producing a limited edition run of the December issue, which will be about roughly quarter of the size of the actual issue, so you can slip it in your pocket. But the interesting thing, I think, is that the type remains the same size. So in terms of an experience of reading, it's not just that everything is shrinking down. It then required a complete redesign and rethink about what the object is itself. So in some cases, you have stories that in the main issue might have run over 6 pages or 8 pages, and they're running over 20 pages or 24 pages.
And the content is exactly the same?
No, so the content is, there is many of the same stories. Some of them have been expanded. Some of them have extra images in them. Some of them we're honing in on details that we're not able to hone in on the main issue. We have new stories in there as well, so essays and features that just exist in the miniature issue. We've commissioned an artist, Lucas Weidinger, to produce a gatefold that will fold out, and that depicts a doll's house. So you look at it and it's a closed doll's house, and then it's as if you're opening the doors and you will see this facade open up and all the rooms come to life inside. And then John Agard, the British poet, wrote a prose piece for the main issue, but he's written a poem for the miniature issue. So they're kind of companion pieces. Everywhere you look, there will be bridges that connect the two, and also plenty of differences and little surprises along the way.
I love the fact that it's very World of Interiors, so it's not just, about small spaces, although they are here. Mm-hmm. There's a nice flat in Paris, So it's quite interesting, the fact that the scope is quite big in a way, right?
Yeah.
Talking about mini is big, quite big here as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So there's a small flat in Paris, and there's a story on Joe Colombo, who was the Italian industrial designer who was incredible in the way that he thought about small spaces and how we should be living. There's a flat in Soho, which is lived in by an artist and fashion designer called John Torrey, and he has completely modified the space so that when you or I look at it, it looks like chaos. But for him, it is this perfectly functioning, rethought space. I mean, it's kind of extraordinary. You have to see it on the page to make sense of it. There's a story on Pakistani trucks and the truck driving community who commission these incredible artists and artisans to embellish their trucks. So they are filled with, quite literally, bells, whistles, pom-poms. They're so beautiful and so colourful. So there are all sorts of, typically eclectic, joyful World of Interiors stories in there.
As we approach the end of the year, so that's December, so I'm sure you're already thinking about January next year. How do you see the World of Interiors for next year? Are you excited? With this kind of expansion of the digital. But, the magazine will remain, of course, and it's a monthly title and it's fantastic. So how do you see 2026 for the World of Interiors?
Yeah, I think I'm really, really excited about where we can go from here. I think this mini issue is a great example of that, the kind of creative thought that is going on within our team. And, it's worth mentioning as well, in our October issue, we had our big new collection shoot, which was this reimagining of Jane Ash's Fancy Dress book that she created in the early 80s. And it just had the most phenomenal response to it. So I think for us, it's about finding joy, irreverence, taking the subject matter really seriously, but finding left field, outlandish kind of new perspectives on that subject matter. So actually another issue we have coming up in our March issue, which will come out in February, the topic is going to be future. So it's the future of living. What does that look like? And that will really cover the gamut. It's technology and sustainability, and we've commissioned a science fiction writer to write a short story for us. So I hope that the World of Interiors will just always surprise in one way or other. It will land on your doormat and you'll never be quite sure what it is you're going to get in there, but hopefully it'll be something that gives you joy.
I'm here flicking the new issue, and I'm loving this piece about dolls' houses. It's fantastic, right? The level of detail as well, because it is an art as well to make things so small sometimes as well, including the World of Interiors, right?
Yeah.
There's an extra attention to detail that you need to do, right?
Yeah, the pages that you have open in front of you it's a story about a woman called Petronella Ortman, who was a Dutch merchant's wife, and she spent the amount of money that equates to buying a full townhouse in Amsterdam, she spent on building a doll's house. Wow. And she commissioned the most extraordinary textiles and ceramics and glassware and marquetry and everything under the sun. And you can now go and see it in the Rijksmuseum. So there's an amazing story in the issue on that. And we've also got a story on Queen Mary's doll's house, which is at Windsor Castle. There's a story on pincushions. There's another one on hen houses. it's everything sort of tiny but perfectly formed.
Thank you, Emily. And for more information on their December issue, go to worldofinteriors.com. This week, Colin Age, a Los Angeles-based writer and strategist, wrote an opinion piece for the Monocle Minute about T-Site, a wonderful bookstore in Tokyo, and how it is an example of what a bookstore should be. I couldn't agree more. It's heaven on earth. Here is Colin explaining to us why is it so good.
I'm generally averse to recommendation lists. Every city has been Google Doc'd and mapped to death, especially Tokyo. But there's one place I always send visitors, Tsutaya Books in Daikayama, better known as T-Site. Not only is this a design pilgrimage, Klein Dytham's 3-pavilion architecture is handsome, but it makes a convincing argument for what bookshops should be. The space itself tells you everything. There are generous proportions and sightlines that encourage wandering. An afternoon here doesn't require purchasing anything. Lingering is the point. Walk into any section and the depth is beyond considered. It's obsessive. Not 12 books on Japanese ceramics, but first editions, contemporary practitioners, historical surveys, exhibition catalogs, and the design magazine profiling a specialized kiln town. Architecture doesn't end at Tadao Endo monographs, and cycling doesn't stop at Tour de France photography. Every interest gets treated with the sincerity of a specialist shop. The magazine walls are a telling sign, hundreds of titles serving micro-interests that elsewhere exist only as newsletters or Reddit threads. There are publications devoted to specific prefectures, particular menswear styles, individual craft traditions, niche sports, and specific schools of graphic design. These survive in print because Japan still has an appetite for focused cultural production. There are razor-sharp editorial points of view supported by actual advertising markets. Essentially, the internet hasn't atomized everything. Then there's Anjin, the cafe. First editions are shelved as wall decor, and there's museum-quality mid-century furniture that you're meant to use and sink into. It's a common space open to anyone that depends entirely on this rare quality of ambient respect. There are no ropes, no defensive design, no please don't touch placards, just an expectation that people will behave properly as the architects, designers, and curators intended. Most Western cities would require guards or else it would be vandalized within a week. Here it simply exists, beautiful and accessible. T-Site also stays fresh through rotating exhibitions and thematic collaborations. A corner featuring Scandinavian design some months ago now pivots to Japanese folk crafts. The space curates like museums do collections, understanding that a bookshop isn't a fixed repository, but an ongoing showcase. Here's why it matters. Most bookshops died because they stopped being interesting, not because people stopped wanting them. They optimized themselves into irrelevance, bestseller tables, moleskin notebooks, corporate sameness. T-Site works because it takes seriously every aspect of what a bookshop can be. Transactional, yes, but also communal, curatorial, atmospheric, and aspirational. It's a place reflecting the density of urban interests rather than flattening everything to algorithmic popularity. It's always worth a trip across the city, not for a specific book, but because the place itself deeply matters. That should be the standard.
Thank you, Colin. And you can subscribe to the Monocle Minute on monocle.com/newsletters. And finally on the show, let's head outdoors to speak with Graham Hiemstra from Field Mag, a website about the outdoor experience with an eye for design, innovation and style. After 10 years, he not only relaunched the website, but published their very first print magazine, a premium biannual title with all the impressive content they already had, but in print. It does look very beautiful. Let's hear it from Graham. Graham Hiemstra, welcome to The Stack to talk about issue 1 of Field Mag, which is a work of beauty as well. But it's interesting, you have to introduce, because it's coming 10 years after, launching a very successful website. So I wonder if you can tell us perhaps about the beginning, actually, of the website, and then we can talk a little bit more about the magazine as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's always nice to get outside of the inbox and actually speak to real people about, the things that we spend so much time dedicating our lives to. But yeah, to answer your question there, Field Mag, this is our 10th year anniversary. It really grew out of an observation that I had had while living in New York, where at the time in the 2010s, the vast majority of outdoor media was exclusively speaking to a monoculture of mountain towns in the American West, really a homogenous type of character in the outdoor space that was hyper-focused on individual activities and really identified as cyclists or runners or hikers. And that's who the endemic outdoor media at the time was speaking to. At that point, I was in New York, having moved from Portland, Oregon, where I grew up, and I was writing about men's fashion and design and architecture, but I was still very much interested in the outdoors and, the kind of outdoor lifestyle that I'd grown up surrounded by in the Pacific Northwest. And in that time, I was noticing a culture shift where a lot more people in the outdoors were identifying less with a single individual activity and more as kind of outdoor enthusiasts. And I felt that there was no outdoor media at the time that was speaking to that more accessible approach, or more, I wouldn't say casual, but just kind of more lifestyle approach to the outdoors. And I felt that I couldn't be the only one who's living in a city and loved living in a city, but also loved getting outdoors on the weekends and doing, proper adventure, larger trips from time to time. And so the idea of Field Mag grew out of that, to speak to people who lived in cities, who loved culture and are informed by culture and love design, but also love nature.
You're tapping into a huge market, let's be honest here, because some publications, you're right. I mean, I love the outdoors, but, no, I can't do that. I can't climb this huge mountain in the middle of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? So I think you're very clever in kind of spotting that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm certainly not the first person to do it, but at the time, outside and the other kind of major endemic media, they were largely ignoring the city. And, I always joke that there's more outdoor enthusiasts in Manhattan than the entire state of Wyoming or Colorado for that matter. And, I think that it's very easy for us, whether we're interested in fashion or design or, hiking, to see the world from a very sort of myopic lens and very insular lens and not view from the larger perspective. And that is what we try to do with Field Mag, is to try and introduce many different definitions of adventure and to share many different perspectives on what it means to be outside and to enjoy Mother Nature at large.
Well, let's talk about the magazine as well. I love the fact that, after 10 years, now all the fans, they actually can have a print copy in their hands. And my first impressions when you sent me the magazine, it looks so beautiful. It feels actually beautiful in the hand as well. So tell us why you wanted a magazine in print.
Well, thank you for the generous description of the magazine there. That really makes me so happy to hear, because truth is, at the end of the day, I may spend 15 hours on email each day, but I'm a bit of a Luddite, and I love tactile objects and I love analog things. Film photography has informed Field Mag since the very beginning, and the tactileness, the quality of the magazine was something that was very important to us, as well as the size of the magazine. We created more of a handheld magazine in a size so you could bring it with you. It can fit in your bag. You can bring it on the subway. You can bring it on the airplane. You can bring it to work. It doesn't have to just live on the coffee table. So many major print magazines and new print magazines these days are rightfully playing with format. And we wanted to create something at the end of the day that was a joy to read and actually readable, and not just an object to sit on the coffee table. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, 10 years of Field Mag. The beauty of creating the magazine after all this time is that, over the years, we've really created a community of like-minded enthusiasts that are lovers of the great outdoors and good design. And this is where we're able to translate the storytelling and the in-depth, beautiful photo essays, and sharing the different perspectives that we do online in an evergreen format that hopefully is as fun to read today as it is in a few years when you pick it back up.
Talking about evergreen, I love, as I said before the interview, the tone of green you chose for the cover as well.
Yeah, well, that makes me very happy and would make our printer very happy.
Who is your printer, if I may ask?
So we printed with and are continuing to work with Meridian Printing in Rhode Island in the Northeast US. And by many accounts, they are the premier art book maker in North America. They have printed many photo books for Ansel Adams, as well as Lee Friedlander and many other amazing photographers. And, they really specialize in super high-end art books for coffee table books. And so working with them on a print magazine was especially fun. I was able to work directly with the founder. We spent 2 days working on the offset press, running 19 hours a day. And it was an incredible experience having worked predominantly in digital publishing to then be there and to be fine tuning the CMYK and the green, as you mentioned on the cover. We have 4 covers, but the green was one that took a lot of fine tuning. We were adjusting that color, at 1 a.m. at the very last second. And I'm so pleased to hear that you think we got it right.
I've noticed the beautiful green. And I want you to tell us some of the highlights from the first issue. And I have to say, everyone should open page 31 as well, which has you in a lovely fashion shoot. I think it feels quite cheeky and quite nice as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the team fashion shoot was a lot of fun. We gathered up all the core contributors at a friend's photo studio in Manhattan, and everybody, got on their preferred outdoor activities outfit, costume, maybe even you could say. And, I dressed up in my ultralight backpacking kit. We had contributors in their rock climbing gear and their trail running gear and their cycling and fly fishing. And it was fun to take those outfits and that gear out of the context of nature and shoot it in the studio setting. And really, I think at the end of the day, that's often what we're trying to do, right? Is like recontextualize the outdoors away from that super intense, exclusive perspective and share it in a way that's maybe easier to digest and a little bit more playful at times. And so, throughout the magazine, throughout issue 1, we have a number of different story kind of types, if you will. We have photo essays from contributor Brian Chorsky, who shot the green cover. We have other photo stories that are more instructive. For example, one from Alex Stroll, who shot the blue cover. He's an amazing photographer and longtime contributor. We have an amazing story that writer Sam Arneson and photographer Chad Unger shot in Northern California at Salmon Creek Farm, which is a queer artist collective and retreat residency. That one blends architecture and nature in a way that I think is both visually incredible as well as just an interesting story. And we have The Women in the Wind, which was another amazing story.
Great photography, a beautiful story as well.
Yeah, that one is really inspiring. As 3 women sailed across the Atlantic in an old refurbished catamaran and created a documentary about it. It's just one more interpretation of adventure. And then juxtaposing with that, we have a studio visit with Colin Meredith, who is a really fantastic fashion designer out of Vancouver, who's previously worked with Arc'teryx as well as a number of other major brands, who has his own label now. So yeah, we're, as with the website, as with the Field Mag in general, within the issue, our goal is to share the many different facets of life as someone who's interested in the outdoors. And that can be the product storytelling, it could be the visual storytelling with photography, and so many other different interpretations.
And this is the first issue. How often will it come out?
It's the golden question.
Yes,
that I'm doing all I can to avoid. No. Our goal is to be printing biannually. We're working on issue 2 right now. The issue 2 hope to release in late winter, early spring of 2026. Currently, we wanted issue 1 to have some time to breathe. So we're not rushing out the issue 2. Issue 1 came as part of a larger kind of 2.0 reintroduction of Field Mag refresh, where we introduced a new website, refreshed the logo, and introduced the new visual language of the magazine as well. And so that's something that we've been working on for about a year and a half now, and it's really exciting to have it live. But the only problem with having a magazine that everybody seems to love is now I got to make more of them.
Absolutely. Now you have to. And do you predict, I don't know, that the magazine will be an important part of revenue for all you do as well?
Yeah, I would like to think so. I think there's a pretty major cultural shift now, especially as, the AI slop era fully comes into form.
We all hate the AI slop here, by the way.
I know. No one's asking for it yet all day. It's the awful meme of don't drink water. We need it for the chat GPT. But to get back to your question, we've been really happy with and proud of the response to issue 1. It was certainly not an inexpensive project to take on, but a worthwhile one. And, we had the fantastic support of advertisers. I think we have 8 or 10 advertisers in the first issue. And, many of those are friends as well as supporters of the website as well. And with issue 2, we'll be introducing subscriptions, which also will hopefully drive some strong revenue. Issue 1, we've made our money back on it, which is always the goal with any sort of physical
That's
endeavor.
Fantastic.
And so, now revenue from issue 1 is going towards issue 2. And, with the refresh of the website, my goal as the business owner was to really diversify revenue and create a platform where we can have revenue coming from beyond just direct ad partnerships and, the occasional affiliate. And so the goal now, which we're seeing actually realized, is to have, kind of 1/3 of the revenue coming from website and newsletters, 1/3 coming from the print magazine, and then 1/3 coming from what we call the Field Mag Studio, which is additional ways that we're working with brand partners. And that's production of events, as well as doing collaborations and other production work that kind of happens behind the scenes.
And Graham, finally, because I'm curious, when it comes to outdoor activities, I know you're based in New York. What do you do? Where do you go near New York or even in the city itself? In your weekend, perhaps?
Absolutely. Well, as with anything in New York, you have to work a little bit hard for it. And at times that makes it all the sweeter. One of my favorite ways of getting outdoors within the city is actually going surfing. I live in the middle of Manhattan in the East Village, and I can take 2 trains with a very simple transfer with my surfboard from the middle of Manhattan and be toes in the sand at Rockaway in about an hour. And there's really something so special about being in the water at sunrise, surfing. I mean, there's dolphins around. There may be a Doritos bag floating in the water as well, but it's a really unique way of experiencing nature, with a view of the skyline and planes from JFK flying over. It's such a unique space. And, I think people forget that for most of its existence, New York City and that area was a beach town in a sense, And so surfing in New York is something that I hold dear, and I'm by no means good at it, but I enjoy it. And in terms of actually hiking and camping, again, you have to work for it. It's a few hours north to get up to the Catskills, but if you can venture further into an area called the Adirondacks, which is actually one of the largest areas of protected public land, it's up near the Canadian border in New York State, but it's an incredible area of proper wilderness, of mountain trails, and it's one of my favorite and really one of the more challenging places to go backpacking. I don't get to do that often, but that's a treat. And, I also say that JFK is only 45 minutes an hour from where I live. I have a lot of family back in the Pacific Northwest and keep a lot of gear stashed there as well. So it's pretty easy to fly pretty much anywhere from New York and get out. And I love being in New York. It's amazing to be at the center of media and so many other cultures and so many other industries. But, I always say to survive and thrive in New York, you need to get out every opportunity you can get.
Thank you, Graham. And for more information, go to fieldmag.com. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Christy O'Grady. If you have any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fp@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.